Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 8 Ahimsa. Verse 17. Kaccāni Jataka. Robed in white, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling at Jetavana, concerning a man who supported his mother. The story is that the man was of good family and conduct in Savatthi. On his father's death he became devoted to his mother and tended her with the services of mouth-washing, teeth-cleansing, bathing, feet-washing and the like, and also by giving her gruel, rice and other food. She said to him, "Dear son, there are other duties in a householder's life. You must marry a maid of a suitable family who will attend to me, and then you can do your proper work. Mother, it is for my own good and pleasure that I wait on you. Who else would wait on you so well? Son, you ought to do something to advance the fortune of our house. I have no care for a householder's life. I will wait on you, and after you are dead and burned I will become an ascetic." She pressed him again and again, and at last, without winning him over or gaining his consent, she brought him a maid of a suitable family. He married and lived with her, because he would not oppose his mother. She observed the great attention with which her husband waited on his mother, and desirous of imitating it she too waited on her with care. Noticing his wife's devotion, he gave her thenceforth all the pleasant food he could get. As time went on she foolishly thought in her pride, "He gives me all the pleasant food he gets. He must be anxious to get rid of his mother and I will find some means for doing so." So one day she said, "Husband, your mother scolds me when you leave the house." He said nothing. She thought, "I will irritate the old woman and make her disagreeable to her son." And thenceforth she gave her rice gruel either very hot or very cold or very salt or saltless. When the old woman complained that it was too hot or too salt, she threw in cold water enough to fill the dish. And then on complaints of its being cold and saltless, she would make a great outcry. "Just now you said it was too hot and too salt. Who can satisfy you?" So at the bath she would throw very hot water on the old woman's back. When she said, "Daughter, my back is burning," the other would throw some very cold water on her, and on complaints of this, she would make a story to the neighbors. "This woman said just now it was too hot. Now she screams, it is too cold. Who can endure her impudence?" If the old woman complained that her bed was full of fleas, she would take the bed out and shake her own bed over it and then bring it back declaring, "I've given it a shake." The good old lady, having twice as many fleas biting her now, would spend the night sitting up and complain of being bitten all night. The other would retort, "Your bed was shaken yesterday and the day before too. Who can satisfy all such a woman's needs?" To set the old woman's son against her, she would scatter phlegm and mucus and gray hairs here and there, and when he asked who was making the whole house so dirty, she would say, "Your mother does it, but if she is told not to do so, she makes an outcry. I can't stay in the same house with such an old witch. You must decide whether she stays or I." He hearkened to her and said, "Wife, you are yet young and can get a living wherever you go. But my mother is weak and I am her stay. Go and depart to your own kin." When she heard this, she was afraid and thought, "He cannot break with his mother who is so very dear to him. But if I go to my old home, I shall have a miserable life of separation. I will conciliate my mother-in-law and tend her as of old." And thenceforth she did so. One day that lay brother went to Jetavana to hear the law. Saluting the master he stood on one side. The master asked him if he were not careless of his old duties, if he were dutiful in tending his mother. He answered, "Yes, Lord. My mother brought me a maid to wife against my will. She did such and such unseemly things," telling him all. "But the woman could not make me break with my mother, and now she tends her with all respect." The master heard the story and said, "This time you would not do her bidding. But formerly you cast out your mother at her bidding and owing to me took her back again to your house and tended her." And at the man's request he told the tale of old. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, a young man of a certain family on his father's death devoted himself to his mother and tended her as in the introductory story. The details are to be given in full as above. But in this case, when his wife said she could not live with the old witch and he must decide which of them should go, he took her word that his mother was in fault and said, "Mother, you are always raising strife in the house. Henceforth go and live in some other place where you choose." She obeyed, weeping, and going to a certain friend's house, she worked for wages and with difficulty made a living. After she left, her daughter-in-law conceived a child, and went about saying to her husband and the neighbors that such a thing could never have happened as long as the old witch was in the house. After the child was born, she said to her husband, "I never had a son while your mother stayed in the house, but now I have, so you can see what a witch she was." The old woman heard that the son's birth was thought to be due to her leaving the house, and she thought, "Surely right must be dead in the world. If it were not so, these people would not have got a son and a comfortable life after beating and casting out their mother. I will make an offering for the dead right." So one day she took ground sesame and rice and a little pot and a spoon. She went to a cemetery of corpses and kindled a fire under an oven made with 3 human skulls. Then she went down into the water, bathed herself head and all, washed her garment, and coming back to her fireplace, she loosened her hair and began to wash the rice. The Bodhisattva was at that time Sakka, king of heaven, and the Bodhisattvas are vigilant. At the instant he saw, in his survey of the world, that the poor old woman was making a death offering to Right as if Right were dead. Wishing to shew his power in helping her, he came down disguised as a Brahmin traveling on the high road. At sight of her, he left the road and, standing near her, began a conversation by saying, "Mother, people do not cook food in cemeteries. What are you going to do with this sesame and rice when cooked?" So he spoke the first stanza. "Robed in white, with dripping hair, why, Kaccāni, boil the pot. Washing rice and sesame there, will you use them when they're hot?" She spoke the second stanza to give him information. "Brahmin, not for food will I use the sesame and the rice. Right is dead. Its memory I would crown with sacrifice." Then Sakka spoke the third stanza. "Lady, think ere you decide. Who has told you such a lie? Strong in might and thousand-eyed, perfect right can never die." Hearing him, the woman spoke 2 stanzas. "Brahmin, I have witness strong. Right is dead, I must believe. All men now who follow wrong, great prosperity receive. Barren once, my good son's spouse beats me, and she bears a son. She is lady of our house. I an outcast and undone." Then Sakka spoke the 6th stanza. "Nay, I live eternally. 'Twas for your sake that I came. She beat you, but her son and she shall be ashes in my flame." Hearing him, she cried, "Alas, what say you? I will try to save my grandson from death." And so she spoke the 7th stanza. "King of gods, your will be done. If for me you left the sky, may my children and their son live with me in amity." Then Sakka spoke the 8th stanza. "Kaccāni's will be done. Beaten, you still on right rely. With your children and their son, share one home in amity." After saying this, Sakka, now in all his divine apparel, stood in the air by his supernatural power and said, "Kaccāni, be not afraid. By my power your son and daughter-in-law will come, and after getting your forgiveness on the way will take you back with them. Dwell with them in peace." Then he went to his own place. By Sakka's power they bethought themselves of her goodness, and making inquiry through the village they found she had gone towards the cemetery. They went along the road calling for her. When they saw her they fell at her feet, and asked and obtained her pardon for their offense. She welcomed her grandson. So they all went home in delight and thenceforth dwelt together, joyful with her good son's wife. Kaccāni then did dwell. Indra pacified their strife. Son and grandson tend her well. This stanza is inspired by perfect wisdom. After the lesson the master declared the truths and identified the birth. After the truths that lay brother was established in the fruition of the first path. At that time the man who supported his mother was the man who is supporting his mother today. The wife of that time was the wife of today, and Sakka was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 8 Ahimsa, 418. Atthasada Jataka. A pool so deep, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning an indistinguishable terrific sound heard at midnight by the king of Kosala. The occasion is like that already described in the Lohakumbhi birth. At this time, however, when the king said, "Lord, what does the hearing of these sounds import to me?" The master answered, "Great king, Be not afraid. No danger shall befall you owing to these sounds. Such terrible, indistinguishable sounds have not been heard by you alone. Kings of old also heard like sounds, and meant to follow the advice of Brahmins to offer in sacrifice for animals of each species, but after hearing what wise men had to say, they set free the animals collected for sacrifice, and caused proclamation by drum against all slaughter. And at the king's request, he told the old tale. Once on a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born in a Brahmin family worth 80 crores. When he grew up, he learned the arts at Takasila. After his parents' death, he reviewed all their treasures, got rid of all his wealth by way of charity, forsook desires, went to the Himalaya and became an ascetic and entered on mystic meditation. After a time, he came to the haunts of men for salt and vinegar, and reaching Benares dwelt in a garden. At that time the king of Benares, when seated on his royal bed at midnight, heard 8 sounds. First, a crane made a noise in a garden near the palace. Second, immediately after the crane, a female crow made a noise from the gateway of the elephant house. Third, an insect settled on the peak of the palace made a noise. Fourth, a tame cuckoo in the palace made a noise. Fifth, a tame deer in the same place. Sixth, a tame monkey there. Seventh, a gnome living in the palace. Eighth, immediately after. The last, a Paksabuddha, passing along the roof of the king's habitation to the garden, uttered a sound of ecstatic feeling. The king was terrified at hearing these 8 sounds, and next day consulted the Brahmins. The Brahmins said, "Great king, there is danger for you. Let us offer sacrifice out of the palace." And getting his leave to do their pleasure, they came in joy and delight and began the work of sacrifice. Now a young pupil of the oldest sacrificial Brahmin was wise and learned. He said to his master, "Master, do not cause such a harsh and cruel slaughter of so many creatures." "Pupil, what do you know about it? Even if nothing else happens, we shall get much fish and flesh to eat." "Master, do not, for the belly's sake, an action which will cause rebirth in hell." Hearing this, the other Brahmins were angry with the pupil for endangering their gains. The pupil in fear said, "Very well, devise a means then of getting fish and flesh to eat," and left the city looking for some pious ascetic able to prevent the king from sacrificing. He entered the royal garden and seeing the Bodhisattva, he saluted him and said, "Have you no compassion on creatures? The king has ordered a sacrifice which will bring death on many creatures. Ought you not to bring about the release of such a multitude?" "Young Brahmin, I do not know the king of this land, nor he me." "Sir, do you know what will be the consequence of those sounds the king heard?" "I do." "If you know, why do you not tell the king?" "Young Brahmin, how can I go with a horn fastened on my forehead to say, 'I know'? If the king comes here to question me, I will tell him." The young Brahmin went swiftly to the king's court, and when he was asked his business, he said, "Great king, a certain ascetic knows the issue of those sounds you heard. He is sitting on the royal seat in your garden, and says he will tell you if you ask him. You should do so." The king went swiftly, saluted the ascetic, and after friendly greeting he sat down and asked, "Is it true that you know the issue of the sounds I have heard?" "Yes, great king." "Then pray tell me." "Great king, there is no danger connected with those sounds. There is a certain crane in your old garden. It was without food and half dead with hunger made the first sound. And so by his knowledge giving precisely the crane's meaning he uttered the first stanza. A pool so deep and full of fish they called this place of your. The crane king's residence it was, my ancestors before, and though we live on frogs today, we never leave its shore. That, great king, was the sound the crane made in the pangs of hunger. If you wish to set it free from hunger, have the garden cleaned and fill the tank with water." The king told a minister to have this done. "Great king, there is a female crow who lives in the doorway of your elephant house. She made the second sound, grieving for her son. You need have no fear from it." And so he uttered the second stanza. "Oh, who of wicked Bandura, the single I will rend. My nest, my nestlings and myself, oh, who will now befriend?" Then he asked the king for the name of the chief groom in the elephant house. "His name, sir, is Bandura." "Has he only one eye, O king?" "Yes, sir." "Great king, a certain crow has built her nest over the doorway of your elephant house. There she laid her eggs, there her young in due time were hatched. Every time the groom enters or leaves the stable on his elephant, he strikes with his hook at the crow and her nestlings, and destroys the nest. The crow in this distress wishes to tear his eye and spoke as she did. If you are well disposed to her, send for Bandura and prevent him from destroying the nest. The king sent for him, rebuked and removed him, and gave the elephant to another. On the peak of your palace roof, great king, there is a wood insect. It bad eaten all the fig wood there and could not eat the harder wood. Lacking food and unable to get away, it made the third sound in lamentation. You need have no fear from it. And so by his knowledge giving precisely the insect's meaning he spoke the third stanza. I've eaten all the fig wood round as far as it would go. Hard wood a weevil liketh not, though other food runs low. The king sent a servant and by some means had the weevil set free. In your habitation, great king, is there a certain tame cuckoo? There is, sir. Great king, that cuckoo was pining for the forest when it remembered its former life. How can I leave this cage and go to my dear forest? And so made the fourth sound. You need have no fear from it. And so he spoke the fourth stanza. Oh, to leave this royal dwelling. Oh, to gain my liberty. Glad at heart to roam the wood, and build my nest upon the tree. So saying, he added, the cuckoo is pining, great king, set her free. The king did so. Great king, is there a tame deer in your habitation? There is, sir. He was chief of the herd. Remembering his hind and pining for love of her, he made the fifth sound. You need have no fear from it. And he spoke the fifth stanza. Oh, to leave this royal dwelling. Oh, to gain my liberty. Drink pure water of the fountain. Lead the herd that followed me. The great being caused this deer too to be set free and went on. Great king, is there a tame monkey in your habitation? There is, sir. He was chief of a herd in the Himalaya, and he was fond of the society of female monkeys. He was brought here by a hunter named Bharata. Pining and longing for his old haunts, he made the sixth sound. You need have no fear from it. And he spoke the sixth stanza. Filled and stained was I with passions, with desire infatuate. Bharata the hunter took me. May I bring you happy fate. The great being caused the monkey too to be set free, and went on. Great king, is there a gnome living in your habitation? There is, sir. He is thinking of what he did with his sylph, and in the pain of desire made the seventh sound. One day he had climbed the peak of a high mountain with her. They plucked and decked themselves with many flowers of choice hue and scent, and never noticed that the sun was setting. Darkness fell as they were descending. The sylph said, Husband, it is dark. Come down carefully without stumbling. And taking him by the hand, she led him down. It was in memory of her words that he made the sound. You need have no fear from it. By his knowledge he stated and made known the circumstance precisely, and spoke the seventh stanza. When the darkness gathered thickly on the mountain summit lone, stumble not, she gently warned me, with thy foot against a stone. So the great being explained why the gnome had made the sound, and caused him to be set free, and went on, Great king, there was an eighth sound, one of ecstasy. A certain Paccābuddha in the Nandamula cave, knowing that the conditions of life were now at an end for him, came to the abode of man, thinking, I will enter into nirvana in the king of Benares park. His servants will bury me and hold sacred festival and venerate my relics and so attain heaven. He was coming by his supernatural power, and just as he reached your palace roof, he threw off the burden of life and sung in ecstasy the song that lights up the entrance into the city of nirvana. And so he spoke the stanza uttered by the Paccābuddha. Surely I see the end of birth. I ne'er again the womb shall see. My last existence on the earth is o'er and all its misery. With these words of ecstasy he reached your park and passed into nirvana at the foot of a sal tree in full flower. Come, great king, and perform his funeral rites. So the great being took the king to the place where the Paccābuddha entered into nirvana and shewed him the body. Seeing the body, the king with a great army paid honor with perfumes and flowers and the like. By the Bodhisattva's advice he stopped the sacrifice, gave all the creatures their lives, made proclamation by drum through the city that there should be no slaughter, caused sacred festival to be held for 7 days, had the Paccābuddha's body burnt with great honor on a pyre heaped with perfumes, and made a stupa where 4 high roads meet. The Bodhisattva preached righteousness to the king and exhorted him to diligence. Then he went to the Himalaya and there did works in the perfect states, and without a break in his meditations became destined for the Brahma heaven. After the lesson, the master said, "Great king, there is no danger at all to you from that sound. Stop the sacrifice and give all these creatures their lives." And having caused proclamation to be made by drum that their lives were spared, he identified the birth. At that time the king was Ananda, the pupil was Sariputta, and the ascetic was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 8 Ahimsa. For 19. Sulasā Jataka. Here is a golden necklace, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning a female servant of Anathapindika. The story is that one feast day, when she was going with a number of fellow servants to a pleasure garden, she asked her mistress Panalakanadevi for an ornament to wear. Her mistress gave her an ornament of her own, worth 100,000 pieces. She put it on and went along with the other servants to the pleasure garden. A certain thief coveted the ornament, and with the design of killing her and taking it he began talking to her, and in the garden he gave her fish, flesh and strong drink. He does it, I suppose, because he desires me, she thought, and at evening when the others lay down to rest after their sports, she rose and went to him. He said, "Mistress, this place is not private. Let us go a little farther." She thought, "Anything private can be done in this place. No doubt he must be anxious to kill me and take what I am wearing. I'll teach him a lesson." So she said, "Master, I am dry owing to the strong drink. Get me some water." And taking him to a well asked him to draw some water, shewing him the rope and bucket. The thief let down the bucket. Then as he was stooping to draw up the water, the girl, who was very strong, pushed him hard with both hands and threw him into the well. "You won't die that way," she said, and threw a large brick upon his head. He died on the spot. When she came back to the town and gave her mistress the ornament, she said, "I have very nearly been killed today for that ornament," and told the whole story. The mistress told Anathapindika, and he told the Tathagata. The master said, "Householder, this is not the first time that servant girl has been endowed with wits rising to the occasion. She was so before also. It is not the first time she killed that man. She did it once before, and at Anathapindika's request, he told the tale of old. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, there was a beautiful woman of the town called Sulasā, who had a train of 500 courtesans, and whose price was 1,000 pieces a night. There was in the same city a robber named Satuka, as strong as an elephant, who used to enter rich men's houses at night and plunder at will. The townsmen assembled and complained to the king. The king ordered the city watch to post bands here and there, have the robber caught and cut off his head. They bound his hands behind his back and led him to the place of execution, scourging him in every square with whips. The news that he was taken excited the whole city. Sulasā was standing at a window, and looking down on the street she saw the robber, loved him at sight and thought, "If I can free that stout fighting man, I will give up this bad life of mine and live respectably with him." In the way described in the Canaver birth, she gained his freedom by sending 1,000 pieces to the chief constable of the city, and then lived with him in delight and harmony. The robber, after 3 or 4 months, thought, "I shall never be able to stay in this one place, but one can't go empty-handed. Sulasā's ornaments are worth 100,000 pieces. I will kill her and take them." So he said to her one day, "Dear, when I was being hauled along by the king's men, I promised an offering to a tree deity on a mountaintop, who is now threatening me because I have not paid it. Let us make an offering." "Very well, husband, prepare and send it." "Dear, it will not do to send it. Let us both go and present it, wearing all our ornaments and with a great retinue." "Very well, husband, will do so." He made her prepare the offering, and when they reached the mountain foot, he said, "Dear, the deity, seeing this crowd of people, will not accept the offering. Let us two go up and present it." She consented, and he made her carry the vessel. He was himself armed to the teeth, and when they reached the top, he set the offering at the foot of a tree which grew beside a precipice 100 times as high as a man, and said, "Dear, I have not come to present the offering. I have come with the intention of killing you and going away with all your ornaments. Take them all off and make a bundle of them in your outer garment." Husband, why would you kill Met? For your money. Husband, remember the good I have done you. When you were being hauled along in chains, I gave up a rich man's son for you and paid a large sum and saved your life. Though I might get 1,000 pieces a day, I never look at another man. Such a benefactress I am to you. Do not kill me, I will give you much money and he your slave. With these entreaties she spoke the first stanza. Here is a golden necklace and emeralds and pearls. Take all and welcome. Give me place among thy servant girls. When Jataka had spoken the second stanza in accordance with his purpose, to wit, "Fair lady, lay thy jewels down and do not weep so sore. I'll kill thee, else I can't be sure thou'lt give me all thy store." Sulasā's wits rose to the occasion and thinking, "This robber will not give me my life, but I'll take his life first by throwing him down the precipice in some way." She spoke the two stanzas. Within my years of sense, within my conscious memory, no man on earth, I do protest, have I loved more than thee. Come hither, for my last salute, receive my last embrace, for never more upon the earth shall we meet face to face. Jataka could not see her purpose, so he said, "Very well, dear. Come and embrace me." Sulasā walked round him in respectful salutation 3 times, kissed him and saying, "Now, husband, I am going to make obeisance to you on all 4 sides." She put her head on his foot, did obeisance at his sides, and went behind him as if to do obeisance there. Then with the strength of an elephant she took him by the hinder parts and threw him head over heels down that place of destruction 100 times as high as a man. He was crushed to pieces and died on the spot. Seeing this deed, the deity who lived on the mountaintop spoke these stanzas. Wisdom at times is not confined to men. A woman can chew wisdom now and then. Wisdom at times is not confined to men. Women are quick in counsel now and then. How quick and keen she was the way to know. She slew him like a deer with full stretched bow. He that to great occasion fails to rise, falls like that dull thief from the precipice. One prompt a crisis in his fate to see, like her is saved from threatening enemy. So Sulasā killed the robber. When she descended from the mountain and came among her attendants, they asked where her husband was. "Don't ask me," she said, and mounting her chariot she went on to the city. After the lesson, the master identified the birth. At that time the two then were the same two now, the deity was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 8 Ahimsa, 420. Sumangala Jataka. Conscious of an angry frown, etc., the master told this tale while dwelling at Jetavana, concerning the admonition of a king. On this occasion the master, at the king's request, told the tale of old. Once on a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born as the son of his chief queen. When he grew up, he became king on his father's death and gave abundant alms. He had a park keeper named Sumangala. A certain Paksabuddha left the Nandamula cave on a pilgrimage for alms, and coming to Benares stayed in the park. Next day he went into the town to beg. The king saw him with favor, made him come up into the palace and sit on the throne, waited on him with various delicate kinds of food, both hard and soft, and received his thanks. Being pleased that the Paksabuddha should stay in his park, he exacted a promise and sent him back thither. After his morning meal he went there in person, arranged the places for his habitation by night and day, gave him the park keeper Sumangala as attendant, and went back to the town. After that the Paksabuddha had meals constantly in the palace and lived there a long time. Sumangala respectfully attended on him. One day he went away, saying to Sumangala, "I am going to such and such a village for a few days, but will come back, inform the king." Sumangala informed the king. After a few days' stay in that village, the Paksabuddha came back to the park in the evening after sunset. Sumangala, not knowing of his arrival, had gone to his own house. The Paksabuddha put away his bowl and robe, and after a little walk sat down on a stone slab. That day some strange guests had come to the park keeper's house. To get them soup and curry he had gone with a bow to kill a tame deer in the park. He was there looking for a deer when he saw the Paksabuddha, and thinking he was a great deer, he aimed an arrow and shot him. The Paksabuddha uncovered his head and said, "Sumangala." Greatly moved, Sumangala said, "Sir, I knew not of your coming and shot you, thinking you were a deer. Forgive me." "Very well, but what will you do now? Come, pull out the arrow." He made obeisance and pulled it out. The Paksabuddha felt great pain and passed into nirvana then and there. The park keeper thought the king would not pardon him if he knew. He took his wife and children and fled. By supernatural power the whole city heard that the Paksabuddha had entered nirvana, and all were greatly excited. Next day some men entered the park, saw the body, and told the king that the park keeper had fled after killing the Paksabuddha. The king went with a great retinue and for 7 days paid honor to the body. Then with all ceremony he took the relics, built a shrine, and doing honor to it went on ruling his kingdom righteously. After a year, Sumangala determined to find out what the king thought. He came and asked a minister whom he saw to find out what the king thought of him. The minister praised Sumangala before the king, but he was as if he heard not. The minister said no more, but told Sumangala that the king was not pleased with him. After another year he came, and again in the 3rd year he brought his wife and children. The minister knew the king was appeased, and setting Sumangala at the palace door told the king of his coming. The king sent for him, and after greeting said, "Sumangala, why did you kill that Paksabuddha, through whom I was gaining merit?" "O king, I did not mean to kill him, but it was in this way that I did the deed." And he told the story. The king bade him have no fear, and reassuring him made him park keeper again. Then the minister asked, "O king, why did you make no answer when you heard Sumangala's praises twice? And on the 3rd hearing, why did you send for him and forgive him?" The king said, "Dear sir, it is wrong for a king to do anything hastily in his anger. Therefore I was silent at first, and the 3rd time when I knew I was appeased I sent for Sumangala." And so he spoke these stanzas to declare the duty of a king. Conscious of an angry frown, ne'er let king stretch out his rod. Things unworthy of a crown then would follow from his nod. Conscious of a milder mood, let him judgment's harsh decree. When the case is understood, fix the proper penalty. Self nor others will he vex, clearly parting right from wrong. Though his yoke is on men's necks, virtue holds him high and strong. Princes reckless in their deed ply the rod remorselessly. Ill repute is here their meed. Hell awaits them when they die. They who love the saintly law, pure in deed and word and thought, filled with kindness, calm and awe, pass through both worlds as they ought. King am I, my people's lord. Anger shall not check my bent. When to vice I take the sword, pity prompts the punishment. So the king declared his own good qualities in 6 stanzas. His whole court were pleased and declared his merits in the words, "Such excellence in moral practices and qualities is worthy of your majesty." Sumangala, after the court had finished speaking, saluted the king, and after obeisance spoke 3 stanzas in the king's praise. "Such thy glory and thy power, ne'er resign them for an hour. Free from anger, free from fears, reign in joy 100 years. Prince, whom all those virtues bless, mild and bland, but firm in worth, rule the world with righteousness, pass to heaven when freed from earth. True in word, in action good, take the means thy end to gain. Calm the troubled multitude, as a cloud with genial rain." After the lesson connected with the admonition of the Kosala king, the master identified the birth. At that time the Paksabuddha passed into nirvana. Sumangala was Ananda, the king was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 8 Ahimsa, 421. Gangamala Jataka. The earth's like coals, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning the keeping of the weekly holy days. One day the master was addressing the lay brethren who were keeping the holy days and said, "Lay brethren, your conduct is good. When men keep the holy days they should give alms, keep the moral precepts, never show anger, feel kindness and do the duties of the day. Wise men of old gained great glory from even a partial keeping of the holy days." And at their request he told the tale of old. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, there was a rich merchant in that city named Sulasā, whose wealth reached 80 crores and who took delight in charity and other good works. His wife and children and all his household and servants down to the calf herds kept 6 holy days every month. At that time the Bodhisattva was born in a certain poor family and lived a hard life on workmen's wages. Hoping to get work he came to Sulasā's house. Saluting and sitting on one side, he was asked his errand and said, "It was to get work for wages in your house." When other workmen came to him, the merchant used to say to them, "In this house the workmen keep the moral precepts, if you can keep them you may work for me." But to the Bodhisattva he made no hint in the way of mentioning moral precepts but said, "Very well, my good man, you can work for me and arrange about your wages." Thenceforth the Bodhisattva did all the merchant's work meekly and heartily, without a thought of his own weariness. He went early to work and came back at evening. One day they proclaimed a festival in the city. The merchant said to a female servant, "This is a holy day. You must cook some rice for the work people in the morning. They will eat it early and fast the rest of the day." The Bodhisattva rose early and went to his work. No one had told him to fast that day. The other work people ate in the morning and then fasted. The merchant with his wife, children and attendants kept the fast. All went, each to his own abode, and sat there meditating on the moral precepts. The Bodhisattva worked all day and came home at sunset. The cook maid gave him water for his hands, and offered him in a dish rice taken from the boiler. The Bodhisattva said, "At this hour there is a great noise on ordinary days. Where have they all gone today? They are all keeping the fast, each in his own abode." He thought, "I will not be the only person misconducting himself among so many people of moral conduct." So he went and asked the merchant if the fast could be kept at all by undertaking the duties of the day at that hour. He told him that the whole duty could not be done, because it had not been undertaken in the morning. But half the duty could be done. "So far be it," he answered, and undertaking the duty in his master's presence, he began to keep the fast, and going to his own abode he lay meditating on the precepts. He had taken no food all day, and in the last watch he felt pain like a spear wound. The merchant brought him various remedies and told him to eat them. But he said, "I will not break my fast. I have undertaken it though it cost my life." The pain became intense and at sunrise he was losing consciousness. They told him he was dying, and taking him out they set him in a place of retirement. At this moment the king of Benares in a noble chariot with a great retinue band reached that spot in a progress round the city. The Bodhisattva, seeing the royal splendor, felt a desire for royalty and prayed for it. Dying, he was conceived again, in consequence of keeping half the fast day, in the womb of the chief queen. She went through the ceremony of pregnancy, and bore a son after 10 months. He was named Prince Udaya. When he grew up he became perfect in all sciences. By his memory of previous births, he knew his former action of merit, and thinking it was a great reward for a little action he sang the song of ecstasy again and again. At his father's death he gained the kingdom, and observing his own great glory he sang the same song of ecstasy. One day they made ready for a festival in the city. A great multitude were intent on amusement. A certain water carrier who lived by the north gate of Benares had hid a halfpenny in a brick in a boundary wall. He cohabited with a poor woman who also made her living by carrying water. She said to him, "My lord, there is a festival in the town. If you have any money, let us enjoy ourselves." "I have, dear." "How much?" "A halfpenny." "Where is it?" "In a brick by the north gate. 12 leagues from here I leave my treasure." "But have you got anything in hand?" "I have." "How much?" "A halfpenny." "So yours and mine together make a whole penny. We'll buy a garland with one part of it, perfume with another, and strong drink with a third. Go and fetch your halfpenny from where you put it. He was delighted to catch the idea suggested by his wife's words, and saying, "Don't trouble, dear, I will fetch it," he set out. The man was as strong as an elephant. He went more than 6 leagues, and though it was midday and he was treading on sand as hot as if it were strewn with coals just off the flame, he was delighted with the desire of gain, and in old yellow clothes with a palm leaf fastened in his ear, he went by the palace court in pursuit of his purpose, singing a song. King Udaya stood at an open window, and seeing him coming wondered who it was, who disregarding such wind and heat went singing for joy, and sent a servant to call him up. "The king calls for you," he was told. But he said, "What is the king to me? I don't know the king." He was taken by force and stood on one side. Then the king spoke 2 stanzas in inquiry. "The earth's like coals, the ground like embers hot. You sing your song, the great heat burns you not. The sun on high, the sand below are hot. You sing your song, the great heat burns you not." Hearing the king's words, he spoke the 3rd stanza. "'Tis these desires that burn, and not the sun. 'Tis all these pressing tasks that must be done." The king asked what his business was. He answered, "O king, I was living by the south gate with a poor woman. She proposed that she and I should amuse ourselves at the festival and asked if I had anything in hand. I told her I had a treasure stored inside a wall by the north gate. She sent me for it to help us to amuse ourselves. Those words of hers never leave my heart, and as I think of them hot desire burns me. That is my business." "Then what delights you so much that you disregard wind and sun, and sing as you go?" "O king, I sing to think that when I fetch my treasure I shall amuse myself along with her." "Then, my good man, is your treasure hidden by the north gate 100,000 pieces?" "Oh no." Then the king asked in succession if it were 50,000, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5, for 3, 2 gold pieces, 1 piece, half a piece, a quarter piece, 4 pence, 3, 2, 1 penny. The man said no to all these questions, and then, "It is a halfpenny. Indeed, O king, that is all my treasure, but I am going in hopes of fetching it and then amusing myself with her, and in that desire and delight the wind and sun do not annoy me." The king said, "My good man, don't go there in such a heat. I will give you a halfpenny." "O king, I will take you at your word and accept it, but I won't lose the other. I won't give up going there and fetching it too. My good man, stay here. I'll give you a penny, 2 pence. Then offering more and more he went on to 1 crore, 100 crores, boundless wealth if the man would stay. But he always answered, "O king, I'll take it, but I'll fetch the other too." Then he was tempted by offers of posts as treasurer and posts of various kinds and the position of viceroy. At last he was offered half the kingdom if he would stay. Then he consented. The king said to his ministers, "Go, have my friend shaved and bathed and adorned, and bring him back." They did so. The king divided his kingdom in 2 and gave him half. But they say that he took the northern half from love of his halfpenny. He was called King Halfpenny. They ruled the kingdom in friendship and harmony. One day they went to the park together. After amusing themselves, King Udaya lay down with his head in King Halfpenny's lap. He fell asleep, while the attendants were going here and there enjoying their amusements. King Halfpenny thought, "Why should I always have only half the kingdom? I will kill him and be sole king." So he drew his sword, but thinking to strike him remembered that the king had made him, when poor and mean, his partner and set him in great power, and that the thought which had risen in his mind to kill such a benefactor was a wicked one. So he sheathed the sword. A second and a third time the same thought rose. Feeling that this thought, rising again and again, would lead him on to the evil deed, he threw the sword on the ground and woke the king. "Pardon me, O king," he said, and fell at his feet. "Friend, you have done me no wrong. I have, O great king. I did such and such a thing. Then, friend, I pardon you. If you desire it, be sole king, and I will serve under you as viceroy." He answered, "O king, I have no need of the kingdom. Such a desire will cause me to be reborn in evil states. The kingdom is yours, take it. I will become an ascetic. I have seen the root of desire. It grows from a man's wish. From henceforth I will have no such wish." And so in ecstasy he spoke the 4th stanza. I have seen thy roots, desire. In a man's own will they lie. I will no more wish for thee, and thou, desire, shalt die. So saying, he spoke the fifth stanza declaring the law unto a great multitude devoted to desires. Little desire is not enough, and much but brings us pain. Ah, foolish men! Be sober, friends, if ye would wisdom gain. So declaring the law unto the multitude, he entrusted the realm to King Udaya. Leaving the weeping multitude with tears on their faces, he went to the Himalaya, became an ascetic and reached perfect insight. At the time of his becoming an ascetic, King Udaya spoke the sixth stanza in complete expression of ecstasy. Little desire has brought me all the fruit. Great is the glory Udaya acquires. Mighty the gain if one is resolute. To be a brother and forsake desires. No one knew the meaning of this stanza. One day the chief queen asked him the meaning of it. The king would not tell. There was a certain court barber called Gangamala, who when attending to the king used to use the razor first, and then grasp the hairs with his tweezers. The king liked the first operation, but the second gave him pain. At the first he would have given the barber a boon, at the second he would have cut his head off. One day he told the queen about it, saying that their court barber was a fool. When she asked what he ought to do, he answered, "Use the tweezers first and the razor afterwards." She sent for the barber and said, "My good man, when you are trimming the king's beard you ought to take his hairs with your tweezers first and use the razor afterwards. Then if the king offers you a boon, you must say you don't want anything else, but wish to know the meaning of his song. If you do, I will give you much money." He agreed. On the next day when he was trimming the king's beard, he took the tweezers first. The king said, "Gangamala, is this a new fashion of yours?" "O king," he answered, "barbers have got a new fashion." And he grasped the king's hair with the tweezer first, using the razor afterwards. The king offered him a boon. "O king, I do not want anything else. Tell me the meaning of your song." The king was ashamed to tell what his occupation had been in his days of poverty, and said, "My good man, what is the use of such a boon to you? Choose something else." But the barber begged for it. The king feared to break his word and agreed. As described in the Kammasapinda birth, he made all arrangements and seated on a jeweled throne, told the whole story of his former act of merit in his last existence in that city. "That explains," he said, "half the stanza. For the rest, my comrade became an ascetic. I in my pride am sole king now, and that explains the second half of my song of ecstasy." Hearing him, the barber thought, "So the king got this glory for keeping half a fast day. Virtue is the right course. What if I were to become an ascetic and work out my own salvation?" He left all his relatives and worldly goods, gained the king's permission to become religious, and going to the Himalaya he became an ascetic, realized the three qualities of mundane things, gained perfect insight, and became a Paksabuddha. He had a bowl and robes made by supernatural power. After spending 5 or 6 years on the mountain Gangamala, he wished to see the king of Benares, and passing through the air to the royal park there, he sat on the royal stone seat. The park keeper told the king that Gangamala, now a Paksabuddha, had come through the air and was sitting in the park. The king went at once to salute the Paksabuddha, and the queen mother went out with her son. The king entered the park, saluted him, and sat on one side with his retinue. The Paksabuddha spoke to him in a friendly manner, Brahmadatta, calling him by the name of the family. "Are you diligent? Ruling the kingdom righteously? Doing charitable and other good works?" The queen mother was angry. "This low-caste shampooing son of a barber does not know his place. He calls my kingly high-descended son Brahmadatta." And she spoke the 7th stanza. "Penance forsooth makes men forsake their sins. Their barbers, potters, stations every one. Through penance Gangamala glory wins. And Brahmadatta now he calls my son." The king checked his mother, and declaring the qualities of the Paksabuddha, he spoke the 8th stanza. "Lo! How ere his death befall, meekness brings a man its fruit. One who bowed before us all, kings and lords must now salute." Though the king checked his mother, the rest of the multitude rose up and said, "It is not decent that such a low-caste person should speak to you by name in that way." The king rebuked the multitude, and spoke the last stanza to declare the virtues of the Paksabuddha. Scorn not Gangamala so, perfect in religion's ways. He has crossed the waves of woe. Free from sorrow now he strays. So saying, the king saluted the Kaccābuddha and asked him to forgive the queen mother. The Kaccābuddha did so, and the king's retinue also gained his forgiveness. The king wished him to promise that he would stay in the neighborhood. But he refused, and standing in the air before the eyes of the whole court, he admonished the king and went away to Gangamala. After the lesson the master said, "Lay brethren, you see how keeping the fast is proper to be done." And he identified the birth. At that time the Kaccābuddha entered into nirvana. King Halfpenny was Ananda, the chief queen was the mother of Rahula, King Udaya was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 8 Ahimsa, 422. Cetiya Jataka. Injured right can injure sorely, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling at Jetavana, concerning Devdattas being swallowed up by the earth. On that day they were discussing in the hall of truth how Devdatta had spoken falsely, had sunk into the ground and become destined to the hell of Ichi. The master came and, hearing the subject of their talk, said, "This is not the first time he sank into the earth." And so he told the tale of old. Once upon a time, in the first age, there was a king named Mahasamada, whose life was an asankhya long. His son was Roha, his son Vararoja, and then the succession was Kalyana, Varakalayana, Upasatha, Mandhata, Varamandita, Kara, Upakara, who was also called Apakara. He reigned over the kingdom of Seti in the city of Sadavati. He was endowed with 4 supernatural faculties. He could walk aloft and pass through the air. He had 4 angels in each of the 4 quarters to defend him with drawn swords. He diffused the fragrance of sandalwood from his body. He diffused the fragrance of the lotus from his mouth. His family priest was named Kapila. This Brahmin's younger brother, Korakalamba, had been taught along with the king by the same teacher and was the king's playmate. When Apakara was prince, he promised to make Korakalamba his family priest when he became king. At his father's death he became king, but he could not depose Kapila from the position of family priest. And when Kapila came to wait on him, he shewed him special forms of honor. The Brahmin observed this and considered that a king manages best with ministers of his own age, and that he himself might get leave from the king to become an ascetic, so he said, "O king, I am getting old. I have a son at home. Make him family priest and I will become an ascetic." He got the king's leave and had his son appointed family priest. Then he went to the king's park, became an ascetic, reached transcendent knowledge and lived there, near his son. Korakalambika felt a grudge against his brother because he had not got him his post when he became an ascetic. One day the king said to him in friendly conversation, "Korakalambika, you are not family priest?" "No, O king, my brother has managed it." "Has not your brother become an ascetic?" "He has, but he got the post for his son." "Then do you manage it?" "O king, it is impossible for me to set aside my brother and take a post which has come by descent. If so, I will make you senior and the other your junior." "How, O king?" "By a lie." "O king, do you not know that my brother is a magician, endowed with great supernatural power? He will deceive you with magical illusions. He will make your 4 angels disappear, and make as it were an evil odor come from your body and mouth. He will make you come down from the sky and stand on the ground. You will be as if swallowed up by the earth, and you will not be able to abide by your story. Do not trouble. I will manage it." "When will you do it, O king?" "On the 7th day from this." The story went round the city. The king is going by a lie to make the senior the junior, and will give the post to the junior. What kind of a thing is a lie? Is it blue or yellow or some other color? The multitude thought greatly about it. It was a time, they say, when the world told the truth. Men did not know what the word lie might mean. The priest's son heard the tale and told his father, "Father, they say the king is going by a lie to make you junior and to give our post to my uncle." "My dear, the king will not be able even by a lie to take our post from us. On what day is he going to do it?" "On the 7th day from this, they say." "Let me know when the time comes." On the seventh day, a great multitude gathered in the king's courtyard, sitting in rows above rows, hoping to see a lie. The young priest went and told his father. The king was ready in full dress. He appeared and stood in the air in the courtyard amid the multitude. The ascetic came through the air, spread his skin seat before the king, sat on his throne in the air and said, "Is it true, O king, that you wish by a lie to make the junior senior and to give him the post?" "Master, I have done so." Then he admonished the king, "O great king, a lie is a grievous destruction of good qualities. It causes rebirth in the four evil states. A king who makes a lie destroys right, and by destroying right he is himself destroyed." And he spoke the first stanza, "Injured right can injure sorely, and requite with injury. Therefore right should ne'er be injured, lest the harm recoil on thee." Admonishing him farther, he said, "Great king, if you make a lie, your four supernatural powers will disappear." And he spoke the second stanza, "The powers divine forsake and leave the man who tells a lie. Ill smells his mouth, he cannot keep his foothold in the sky. Whoer to questioning replies with falsehood willfully." Hearing this, the king in fear looked to Kaccāni. He said, "Be not afraid, O king. Did I not tell you so from the first?" And so forth. The king, though he heard Kapila's words, still put forward his statement. "Sir, you are the younger, Kaccāni is the elder." At the moment when he uttered this lie, the four angels said they would guard such a liar no longer, threw their swords at his feet and disappeared. His mouth was fetid like a broken rotten egg and his body like an open drain, and falling from the air he lighted on the earth. So all his four supernatural powers disappeared. His chief priest said, "Great king, be not afraid. If you will speak the truth, I will restore you everything." And so he spoke the third stanza, "A word of truth, and all thy gifts, O king, thou shalt regain. A lie will fix thee in the soil of Seti to remain." He said, "Look, O great king, those four supernatural powers of yours disappeared first by your lie. Consider, for it is possible now to restore them." But the king answered, "You wish to deceive me in this." And so telling a second lie, he sank in the earth up to the ankles. Then the Brahmin said once more, "Consider, O great king," and spoke the fourth stanza, "Drought comes on him in time of rain, rain when it should be dry. Whoer to questioning replies with falsehood willfully." Then once again he said, "Owing to your lying you are sunk in the earth up to the ankles. Consider, O great king," and spoke the fifth stanza, "One word of truth, and all thy gifts, O king, thou shalt regain. A lie will sink thee in the soil of Seti to remain." But for the third time the king said, "You are junior and Kaccāni is elder." And at this lie he sank in the ground up to the knees. Once more the Brahmin said, "Consider, O great king," and spoke two stanzas, "O king, the man is forked of tongue, and like a serpent sly. Whoer to questioning replies with falsehood willfully. One word of truth, and all thy gifts, O king, thou shalt regain. A lie will sink thee deeper still in Seti to remain." Adding, "Even now all may be restored." The king, not heeding his words, repeated the lie for the fourth time. "You are junior, sir, and Kaccāni is elder." And at these words he sank up to the hips. Again the Brahmin said, "Consider, O great king," and spoke two stanzas, "O king, that man is like a fish, and tongueless he shall be. Whoer to questioning replies with falsehood willfully. One word of truth, and all thy gifts, O king, thou shalt regain. A lie will sink thee deeper still in Seti to remain." For the fifth time the king repeated the lie, and as he did so he sank up to the navel. The Brahmin once more appealed to him to consider, and spoke two stanzas, "Girls only shall be born of him, no man's son shall he see. Whoer to questioning replies with falsehood willfully. One word of truth, and all thy gifts, O king, thou shalt regain. A lie will sink thee deeper still in Seti to remain." The king paid no heed, and repeating the lie for the sixth time sank up to the breast. The Brahmin made his appeal once more and spoke two stanzas. "His children will not stay with him, on every side they flee. Whoer to questioning replies with falsehood willfully. one word of truth, and all thy gifts, O king, thou shalt regain. A lie will sink thee deeper still in Seti to remain. Owing to association with a wicked friend, he disregarded the words and repeated the same lie for the 7th time. Then the earth opened and the flames of Avicii leapt up and seized him. Cursed by a sage, the king who once could walk the air, they say, was lost and swallowed by the earth on his appointed day. Wherefore the wise do not approve at all, when that desire into the heart doth fall. He that is free from guile, whose heart is pure, all that he says is ever firm and sure. These are 2 stanzas inspired by perfect wisdom. The multitude said in fear, the king of Seti reviled the sage and told a lie, so he has entered Avicii. The king's 5 sons came to the Brahmin and said, be thou our helper. The Brahmin answered, your father destroyed right, he lied and reviled a sage. Therefore he has entered Avicii. If right is destroyed, it destroys. You must not dwell here. To the eldest he said, come, dear. Leave the city by the eastern gate and go straight on. You will see a white royal elephant prostrate, touching the earth in 7 places. That will be a sign for you to lay out a city there and dwell in it, and the name of it will he Hathipura. To the second prince he said, you leave by the south gate and go straight on till you see a royal horse pure white. That will be a sign that you are to lay out a city there and dwell in it, and it shall be called Asapura. To the third prince he said, you leave by the west gate and go straight on till you see a maned lion. That will be a sign that you are to lay out a city there and dwell in it, and it shall be called Sahapura. To the fourth prince he said, you leave by the north gate and go straight on till you see a wheel frame all made of jewels. That will be a sign that you are to lay out a city there and dwell in it, and it shall be called Uttarapankala. To the fifth he said, you cannot dwell here. Build a great shrine in this city, go out towards the northwest, and go straight on till you see 2 mountains striking against each other and making the sound of Dadara. That will be a sign that you are to lay out a city there and dwell in it, and it shall be called Dadarapura. All the 5 princes went, and following the signs laid out cities there and dwelt in them. After the lesson, the master said, so, brethren, this is not the first time that Devdatta has told a lie and sunk in the earth. And then he identified the birth. At that time the king of Seti was Devdatta, and the Brahmin Kapila was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 8 Ahanipta, 423. Indriya Jataka. Who through desire, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning temptation by the wife of one's former days. The story is that a young man of good family at Savatthi heard the master's preaching, and thinking it impossible to lead a holy life, perfectly complete and pure as a householder, he determined to become an ascetic under the saving doctrine and so make an end of misery. So he gave up his house and property to his wife and children, and asked the master to ordain him. The master did so, as he was the junior in his going about for alms with his teachers and instructors, and as the brethren were many, he got no chair either in laymen's houses or in the refectory, but only a stool or a bench at the end of the novices. His food was tossed him hastily on a ladle. He got gruel made of broken lumps of rice, solid food stale or decaying, or sprouts dried and burnt, and this was not enough to keep him alive. He took what he had got to the wife he had left. She took his bowl, saluted him, emptied it and gave him instead well-cooked gruel and rice with sauce and curry. The brother was captivated by the love of such flavors and could not leave his wife. She thought she would test his affection. One day she had a countryman cleansed with white clay and set down in her house with some others of his people whom she had sent for, and she gave them something to eat and drink. They sat eating and enjoying it. At the house door she had some bullocks bound to wheels and a cart set ready. She herself sat in a back room cooking cakes. Her husband came and stood at the door. Seeing him, one old servant told his mistress that there was an elder at the door. Salute him and bid him pass on. But though he did so repeatedly, he saw the priest remaining there and told his mistress. She came, and lifting up the curtain to see, she cried, "This is the father of my sons." She came out and saluted him. Taking his bowl and making him enter, she gave him food. When he had eaten, she saluted again and said, "Sir, you are a saint now. We have been staying in this house all this time, but there can be no proper householder's life without a master, so we will take another house and go far into the country. Be zealous in your good works, and forgive me if I am doing wrong." For a time her husband was as if his heart would break. Then he said, "I cannot leave you. Do not go, I will come back to my worldly life. Send a layman's garment to such and such a place. I will give up my bowl and robes and come back to you." She agreed. The brother went to his monastery, and giving up his bowl and robes to his teachers and instructors, he explained, in answer to their questions, that he could not leave his wife and was going back to worldly life. Against his will, they took him to the master and told him that he was backsliding and wished to go back to worldly life. The master said, "Is this tale true?" "It is, Lord." "Who causes you to backslide?" "My wife." "Brother, that woman is the cause of evil to you. Formerly also through her you fell from the 4 stages of mystic meditation and became very miserable. Then through me you were delivered from your misery and regained the power of meditation you had lost." And then he told the tale of old. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born as the son of the king's family priest and his Brahmin wife. On the day of his birth there was a blazing of weapons all over the city, and so they called his name young Jyotipala. When he grew up, he learned all the arts at Takasila and showed his skill in them to the king. But he gave up his position, and without telling anyone he went out by the back door, and entering a forest became an ascetic in the Kavathaka hermitage called Sakadadya. He attained perfection in meditation. As he dwelt there, many hundreds of sages waited on him. He was attended by a great company and had 7 chief disciples. Of them the sage Salasara left the Kavathaka hermitage for the Surata country, and dwelt on the banks of the river Satadaka with many thousand sages in his company. Mendasara with many thousand sages dwelt near the town of Lambakulaka in the country of King Pajaka. Pabada with many thousand sages dwelt in a certain forest country. Kaladevala with many thousand sages dwelt in a certain wooded mountain in Avanti and the Deccan. Kisavaka dwelt alone near the city of Kambhati in the park of King Dandaki. The ascetic Anyasissa was attendant on the Bodhisattva and stayed with him. Narada, the younger brother of Kaladevala, dwelt alone in a cave cell amid the mountainous country of Aranjara in the central region. Now not far from Aranjara there is a certain very populous town. In the town there is a great river, in which many men bathe, and along its banks sit many beautiful courtesans tempting the men. The ascetic Narada saw one of them, and being enamored of her, forsook his meditations and pining away without food lay in the bonds of love for 7 days. His brother Kaladevala by reflection knew the cause of this, and came flying through the air into the cave. Narada saw him and asked why he had come. "I knew you were ill and have come to tend you." Narada repelled him with a falsehood. "You are talking nonsense, falsehood, and vanity." The other refused to leave him and brought Salasara, Mendasara, and Pabatasara. He repelled them all in the same way. Kaladevala went flying to fetch their master Sarabanga and did fetch him. When the master came, he saw that Narada had fallen into the power of the senses, and asked if it were so. Narada rose at the words and saluted, and confessed. The master said, "Narada, those who fall into the power of the senses waste away in misery in this life, and in their next existence are born in hell." And so he spoke the first stanza, "Who through desire obeys the senses' sway, loses both worlds and pines his life away." Hearing him, Narada answered, "Teacher, the following of desires is happiness. Why do you call such happiness misery?" Sarabanga said, "Listen then," and spoke the second stanza, "Happiness and misery ever on each other's footsteps press. Thou hast seen their alternation. Seek a truer happiness." Narada said, "Teacher, such misery is hard to bear. I cannot endure it." The great being said, "Narada, the misery that comes has to be endured," and spoke the third stanza, "He who endures in troublous time with troubles to contend, is strong to reach that final bliss where all our troubles end." But Narada answered, "Teacher, the happiness of love's desire is the greatest happiness. I cannot abandon it." The great being said, "Virtue is not to be abandoned for any cause, and spoke the fourth stanza. For love of lusts, for hopes of gain, for miseries, great and small, do not undo your saintly past, and so from virtue fall. Sarabanga having thus shown forth the law in 4 stanzas, Kaladevala in admonition of his younger brother spoke the 5th stanza. No, the worldly life is trouble, victual should be freely lent. No delight in gathering riches, no distress when they are spent. The 6th stanza is one spoken by the Master in his perfect wisdom concerning Devala's admonition of Narada. So far Black Devala most wisely spoke. None worse than he who bows to sense's yoke. Then Sarabanga spoke in warning. Narada, listen to this. He who will not do at first what is proper to be done, must weep and lament like the young man who went to the forest. And so he told an old tale. Once upon a time in a certain town of Kasi there was a certain young Brahmin, beautiful, strong, stout as an elephant. His thoughts were, why should I keep my parents by working on a farm or have a wife and children or do good works of charity and so forth? I won't keep anybody nor do any good work. But I will go into the forest and keep myself by killing deer. So with the 5 kinds of weapons he went to the Himalaya and killed and ate many deer. In the Himalaya region he found a great defile, surrounded by mountains, on the banks of the river Vidhava, and there he lived on the flesh of the slain deer, cooked on hot coals. He thought, I shall not always be strong. When I grow weak I shall not be able to range the forest. Now I will drive many kinds of wild animals into this defile, close it up by a gate, and then without roaming the forest I shall kill and eat them at my pleasure. And so he did. As time passed over him, that very thing came to pass, and the experience of all the world befell him. He lost control over his hands and feet. He could not move freely here and there. He could not find his food or drink. His body withered. He became the ghost of a man. He showed wrinkles furrowing his body like the earth in a hot season. Ill-favored and ill-knit, he became very miserable. In like manner as time passed, the king of Sivi, named Sivi, had a desire to eat flesh roasted on coals in the forest. So he gave over his kingdom to his ministers, and with the 5 kinds of weapons he went to the forest and ate the flesh of the deer he slew. In time he came to that spot and saw that man. Although afraid, he summoned courage to ask who he was. Lord, I am the ghost of a man, reaping the fruit of the deeds I have done. Who are you? The king of Sivi. Why have you come hither? To eat the flesh of deer. He said, Great king, I have become the ghost of a man because I came here with that object. And telling the whole story at length and explaining his misfortune to the king, he spoke the remaining stanzas. King, 'tis with me as if I'd been with foes in bitter strife. Labor and skill in handicraft, a peaceful home, a wife, all have been lost to me. My works bear fruit in this my life. Worsted 1,000-fold I am, kinless and reft of stay, strayed from the law of righteousness. Like ghost I'm fallen away. This state is mine because I caused, instead of joy, distress. Girt as it were with flaming fire, I have no happiness. With that he added, O king, through desire of happiness I caused misery to others and have even in this life become the ghost of a man. Do not thou commit evil deeds, go to thine own city and do good deeds of charity and the like. The king did so and completed the path to heaven. The ascetic was roused by the teacher Sarabanga's account of this case. He became agitated, and after saluting and gaining his teacher's pardon, by the proper processes he regained the power of meditation he had lost. Sarabanga refused him leave to stay there, and took him back with him to his own hermitage. After the lesson, the master declared the truths and identified the birth. After the truths, the backsliding brother was established in the fruition of the first path. At that time Narada was the backsliding brother, Salasara was Sariputta, Mendasara was Kassapa, Pabada was Anuruddha, Kaladevala was Kaccāna, Anyasissa was Ananda, Kisavaka was Moggallana, and Sarabanga was myself. Good are the cares of household life. 'Tis good to give away, not to be proud when riches grow, nor grieved when they decay. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 8 Ahanipta, 424. Aditta Jataka. Whatever a man can save, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling in Jetavana. concerning an incomparable gift. The incomparable gift must be described in full from the commentary on the Mahagovinda Sutta. On the day after that on which it had been given, they were talking of it in the Hall of Truth. Sirs, the Kosala king after examination found the proper field of merit, and gave the great gift to the assembly with Buddha at its head. The master came and was told what the subject of their talk was as they sat together. He said, "Brethren, it is not strange that the king after examination has undertaken great gifts to the supreme field of merit. Wise men of old also after examination gave such gifts." And so he told a tale of old. Once upon a time a king named Bharata reigned at Roruva in the kingdom of Savira. He practiced the 10 royal virtues, won the people by the 4 elements of popularity, stood to the multitude like father and mother and gave great gifts to the poor, the wayfarers, the beggars, the suitors and the like. His chief queen Samatavijaya was wise and full of knowledge. One day he looked round his alms hall and thought, "My alms are devoured by worthless greedy people. I don't like this. I should like to give alms to the virtuous Pakskabuddhas who deserve the best of gifts. They live in the Himalaya region. Who will bring them here on my invitation, and whom shall I send on this errand?" He spoke to the queen, who said, "O king, be not concerned. Sending flowers by the force of our giving suitable things, and of our virtue and truthfulness, we will invite the Pakskabuddhas, and when they come we will give them gifts with all things requisite." The king agreed. He made proclamation by drum that all the townspeople should undertake to keep the precepts. He himself with his household undertook all the duties for the holy days and gave great gifts in charity. He had a gold box brought, full of jasmine flowers, came down from his palace and stood in the royal courtyard. There prostrating himself on the ground with the 5 contacts, he saluted towards the eastern quarter and threw 7 handfuls of flowers with the words, "I salute the saints in the eastern quarter. If there is any merit in us, shew compassion on us and receive our alms." As there are no Pakskabuddhas in the eastern quarter, they did not come next day. On the 2nd day he paid respects to the south quarter, but none came from thence. On the 3rd day he paid respects to the west quarter, but none came. On the 4th day he paid respects to the north quarter, and after paying respects he threw 7 handfuls of flowers with the words, "May the Pakskabuddhas who live in the north district of Himalaya receive our alms." The flowers went and fell on 500 Pakskabuddhas in the Nandamula cave. On reflection they understood that the king had invited them, so they called 7 of their number and said, "Sirs, the king invites you, shew him favor." These Pakskabuddhas came through the air and lighted at the king's gate. Seeing them the king saluted them with delight, made them come up into the palace, shewed them great honor and gave them gifts. After the meal he asked them for next day and so on until the 5th day, feeding them for 6 days. On the 7th day he made ready a gift with all the requisites, arranged beds and chairs inlaid with gold, and set before the 7 Pakskabuddhas sets of 3 robes and all other things used by holy men. The king and queen formally offered these things to them after their meal, and stood in respectful salutation. To express their thanks the elder of the assembly spoke 2 stanzas. "Whatever a man can save from flames that burn his dwelling down, not what is left to be consumed will still remain his own. The world's on fire, decay and death are there the flame to feed. Save what you can by charity, a gift is saved indeed." Thus expressing thanks the elder admonished the king to be diligent in virtue. Then Lai flew up in the air, straight through the peaked roof of the palace and lighted in the Nandamula cave. Along with him all the requisites that had been given him flew up and lighted in the cave, and the bodies of the king and queen became full of joy. After his departure, the other 6 also expressed thanks in a stanza each. "He who gives to righteous men, strong in holy energy, crosses Yama's flood and then gains a dwelling in the sky. Like to war is charity. Hosts may flee before a few. Give a little piously. Bliss hereafter is your due. Prudent givers please the Lord. Worthily they spend their toil. Rich the fruit their gifts afford. Like a seed in fertile soil. They who never rudely speak. Wrong to living things abjure. Men may call them timid, weak, for 'tis fear that keeps them pure. Lower duties win for man, reborn on earth a princely fate. Middle duties win them heaven, highest win the purest state. Charity is blessed indeed, yet the law gains higher meed. Ages old and late attest, Thus the wise have reached their rest. So they also went with the requisites given them. The seventh Paksabuddha in his thanks praised the eternal nirvana to the king, and admonishing him carefully went to his abode, as has been said. The king and queen gave gifts all their lives and passed fully through the path to heaven. After the lesson, the master said, "So wise omen of old gave gifts with discrimination, and identified the birth. At that time the Paksabuddha reached nirvana, Samadivijaya was the mother of Rahula, and the king Bharata was myself." Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 8 Ahanipta, 425. Atthana Jataka. Make Ganges calm, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning a backsliding brother. The master asked him, "Is the story true, brother, that you are backsliding?" "Yes, Lord." "What is the cause?" "The power of desire." "Brother, womankind are ungrateful, treacherous, untrustworthy. Of old wise men could not satisfy a woman, even by giving her 1,000 pieces a day, and one day when she did not get the 1,000 pieces she had them taken by the neck and cast out. So ungrateful are womankind. Do not fall into the power of desire for such a cause." And so he told an old tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, his son, young Brahmadatta, and young Mahadana, son of a rich merchant of Benares, were comrades and playfellows, and were educated in the same teacher's house. The prince became king at his father's death, and the merchant's son abode near him. There was in Benares a certain courtesan, beautiful and prosperous. The merchant's son gave her 1,000 pieces daily, and took pleasure with her constantly. At his father's death he succeeded to the rich merchant's position, and did not forsake her, still giving her 1,000 pieces daily. 3 times a day he went to wait upon the king. One day he went to wait upon him in the evening. As he was talking with the king, the sun set, and it became dark. As he left the palace, he thought, "There is no time to go home and come back again. I will go straight to the courtesan's house." So he dismissed his attendants and entered her house alone. When she saw him, she asked if he had brought the 1,000 pieces. "Dear, I was very late today, so I sent away my attendants without going home and have come alone. But tomorrow I will give you 2,000 pieces." She thought, "If I admit him today, he will come empty-handed on other days, and so my wealth will be lost. I won't admit him this time." So she said, "Sir, I am but a courtesan. I do not give my favors without 1,000 pieces. You must bring the sum." "Dear, I will bring twice the sum tomorrow." And so he begged her again and again. The courtesan gave orders to her maids. "Don't let that man stand there and look at me. Take him by the neck and cast him out and then shut the door." They did so. He thought, "I have spent on her 80 crores of money. Yet on the one day when I come empty-handed, she has me seized by the neck and cast out. Oh, womankind are wicked, shameless, ungrateful, treacherous." And so he pondered and pondered on the bad qualities of womankind, till he felt dislike and disgust, and became discontented with a layman's life. "Why should I lead a layman's life? I will go this day and become an ascetic," he thought. So without going back to his house or seeing the king again, he left the city and entered the forest. He made a hermitage on the Ganges bank, and there made his abode as an ascetic, reaching the perfection of meditation, and living on wild roots and fruits. The king missed his friend and asked for him. The courtesan's conduct had become known throughout the city. So they told the king of the matter, adding, "O king, they say that your friend through shame did not go home, but has become an ascetic in the forest." The king summoned the courtesan, and asked if the story were true about her treatment of his friend. She confessed, "Wicked, vile woman, go quickly to where my friend is and fetch him. If you fail, your life is forfeit." She was afraid at the king's words. She mounted a chariot and drove out of the city with a great retinue. She sought for his abode, and hearing of it by report, went there and saluted and prayed, "Sir, bear with the evil I did in my blindness and folly. I will never do so again." "Very well, I forgive you. I am not angry with you. If you forgive me, mount the chariot with me. We will drive to the city, and as soon as we enter it I will give you all the money in my house." When he heard her, he replied, "Lady, I cannot go with you now, but when something that cannot happen in this world will happen, then perhaps I may go." And so he spoke the first stanza: "Make Ganges calm like lotus tank, cuckoo's pearl white to see, make apples bear the palm tree's fruit, perchance it then might be." But she said again, "Come, I am going." He answered, "I will go. When? At such and such a time," he said, and spoke the remaining stanzas. "When woven out of tortoise hair a triple cloth you see, for winter wear against the cold, perchance it then may be. When of mosquitoes' teeth you build a tower so skillfully, that will not shake or totter soon, perchance it then may be. When out of horns of hair you make a ladder skillfully, stairs that will climb the height of heaven, perchance it then may be. When mice to mount those ladder stairs and eat the moon agree, and bring down Rahu from the sky, the thing perchance may be. When swarms of flies devour strong drink in pitchers full and free, and house themselves in burning coals, the thing perchance may be. When asses get them ripe red lips and faces fair to see, and shew their skill in song and dance, the thing perchance may be. When crows and owls shall meet to talk in converse privily, and woo each other lover-like, the thing perchance may be. When sunshades, made of tender leaves from off the forest tree, are strong against the rushing rain, the thing perchance may be. When sparrows take Himalaya in all its majesty, and bear it in their little beaks, the thing perchance may be. And when a boy can carry light, with all its bravery, a ship full rigged for distant seas, the thing perchance may be. So the great being spoke these 11 stanzas to fix impossible Atthana conditions. The courtesan, hearing him, won his forgiveness and went back to Benares. She told the matter to the king, and begged for her life, which was granted. After the lesson, the master said, "So, brethren, womankind are ungrateful and treacherous." Then he declared the truths and identified the birth. After the truths, the backsliding brother was established in the fruition of the first path. At that time the king was Ananda, the ascetic was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 8 Ahimsa, 426. Dipi Jataka. How fares it with you, etc.? The master told this tale while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning a certain she-goat. At one time the elder Moggallana lived in a dwelling with one door, in a mountain enclosure, surrounded by hills. His covered walk was close by the door. Some goatherds thought the enclosure would be a good place for their goats, so they drove them in and lived there at their pleasure. One day they came in the evening, took all the goats and went away, but one she-goat had wandered far, and not seeing the goats departing, she was left behind. Later, as she was departing, a certain panther saw her, and thinking to eat her stood by the door of the enclosure. She looked all round and saw the panther. "He is there because he wishes to kill and eat me," she thought. "If I turn and run, my life is lost. I must play the man." And so she tosses her horns, and sprang straight at him with all her might. She escaped his grip, though he was quivering with the thought of catching her. Then running at full speed she came up with the other goats. The elder observed how all the animals had behaved. Next day he went and told the Tathagata. "So, Lord, this she-goat performed a feat by her readiness and device, and escaped from the panther." The master answered, "Moggallana, the panther failed to catch her this time, but once before he killed her, though she cried out and ate her." Then, at Moggallana's request, he told an old tale. Once upon a time the Bodhisattva was born in a certain village of the Magadha kingdom, in a wealthy family. When he grew up, he renounced desires and adopted the religious life, reaching the perfection of meditation. After dwelling long in the Himalaya, he came to Rajagaha for salt and vinegar, and dwelt in a hut of leaves which he made in a mountain enclosure. Just as in the introductory story, the goatherds drove their goats thither. And in the same way, one day as a single she-goat was going out later than the rest, a panther waited by the door, thinking to eat her. When she saw him, she thought, "My life is forfeit. By some means I must get him into pleasant and kindly talk, and so soften his heart and save my life. Beginning a friendly talk with him from some distance, she spoke the first stanza. How fares it with you, uncle? And is it well with you? My mother sends her kind regards, and I'm your friend so true. Hearing her, the panther thought, this baggage would beguile me by calling me uncle. She does not know how hard I am. And so he spoke the second stanza. You've trod upon my tail, Miss Goat, and done me injury, and you think by saying uncle that you can go scot-free. When she heard him, she said, oh uncle, don't talk in that way, and spoke the third stanza. I faced you as I came, good sir, you face me as you sit. Your tail is all behind you. How could I tread on it? He answered, what do you say, she-goat? Is there any place where my tail might not be? And so he spoke the fourth stanza. As far as 4 great continents with seas and mountains spread, my tail extends. How could you fail on such a tail to tread? The she-goat, when she heard this, thought, this wicked one is not attracted by soft words. I will answer him as an enemy. And so she spoke the fifth stanza. Your villain's tail is long, I know, for I had warning fair. Parents and brothers told me so, but I flew through the air. Then he said, I know you came through the air, but as you came, you spoilt my food by your way of coming. And so he spoke the sixth stanza. The sight of you, Miss Goat, on high, the air a-flying through, frightened a herd of deer, and so my food was spoilt by you. Hearing this, the goat in fear of death could bring no other excuse, but cried out, Uncle, do not commit such cruelty. Spare my life. But though she cried out, the other seized her by the shoulder, killed her and ate her. 'Twas thus the she-goat cried for grace, but blood must satisfy the beast that grips her throat. The bad will shew no courtesy, conduct, nor right, nor courtesy, the bad man will display. He hates the good. To face him then 'tis best in open fray. These are 2 stanzas inspired by perfect wisdom. A holy ascetic saw the whole matter of the 2 animals. After this lesson, the master identified the birth. At that time the she-goat and the panther were the she-goat and the panther of today. The holy ascetic was myself.